Morning, everybody. So I think I know most people here. We have even one extra guest with Irma. I see. Good morning. And good morning. So for those not knowing me, I'm Luís Costa, Program Manager in the Mediterranean Program of MAVA. And I will just very briefly introduce this conference to you. So as you saw probably in the invitation, this is about presentation of the final results of the project Mediterranean Mosaics. I will hand over in a minute to Claudio Celada, who was coordinating this project together with his colleagues that he will introduce. So the purpose of this is because this project was now finished, and we saw the excellent results from the project in their final report and our discussions, and it really covers a lot of topics that are currently being topics also of the projects of our outcome action plans for birds, for coastal wetlands, for river basins, and for cultural landscapes, particularly those ones. So we thought that it would be very interesting to share these results with you and promote exchanges between the partners of this project and yourselves, and to share the results per se. So what we are going to do before I give the floor to Claudio is just to say that this will be recorded. So if you have other colleagues or other people you know that are interested in knowing the results of the project and seeing this conference, so we will send the link of the recorded version afterwards. And also there will be some time for questions in the end of the session. So before we will see the presentations from our colleagues, and then if you have some questions to them, please write those questions in the text box in the Zoom, so we can call you in the end for making these questions directly to the presenters. So this is it from me. I don't want to take more time from you on this, and I will hand over to Claudio so we can present the participants and the project and the agenda, of course. Thank you, Claudio.
Okay, thanks a lot, Luís, and thanks to the MAVA Foundation for organizing this with us, and a big thank you for you for spending this morning with us today. What I'm going to do right now is to give you a very short introduction on the general approach of the project. And I should mention that this introduction has been prepared by Marco Pagliani, who has been the international coordinator of the project. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Apparently, I cannot get the full screen format for some reason from my computer.
We can see like that.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward. So the basic idea is that as we all know, the Mediterranean is a very peculiar area with an environment that can be really extreme and unstable. And also the history of the Mediterranean is very, very complex, and human beings have left their footprints for a very, very long time. So as a consequence, both ecosystems and people have developed adaptation strategies all along the way to deal with this extreme environment. However, especially in the last decades, we are experiencing an environmental crisis, and most of us feel that we are reaching a point of no return due to habitat degradation and especially to climate change, which is going to hit heavily on the Mediterranean area and in particular on the mountains of the Mediterranean ecoregion. So our attempt was to act simultaneously on at different levels, the biological and the ecological, but also the social and economical, and to do so at a large scale that we call landscape scale whenever possible. So what we wanted to do is what could sound as a lifelong project was to build a disturbance smart social ecosystems at the landscape level. And in order to do so, what we wanted to do was to contribute to strengthen the resilience of some Mediterranean landscapes. And we wanted to do so through nature-based solutions, that is to promote conservation of biodiversity in rural development in the Mediterranean social ecosystems, with an important role of the identity of local communities. So based on these principles, we wanted to promote a new framework of land use and rural development policies. The history of the project is quite long. Originally, a group of professionals and organizations were thinking about a broader project involving several countries. Then we obtained a generous contribution from IUCN to run a one-year feasibility study. And then at the end, we decided to narrow down a proposal to a couple of study areas, and this proposal was submitted to MAVA. The Mediterranean Mosaics project is composed of two different phases. All in all, we have been working on these for seven years. Very quickly, the two study areas. One is the Velino-Sirente area in Abruzzo, central Italy, which is this one, if you can see my pointer, and the other is the Shouf Biosphere Reserve in Lebanon. Later on, you will learn more about these two study areas. Apart from this, LIPU carried out work in the same Italian area, in Abruzzi, in a broader area, work on birds community. And as you will see later, we also did work on wetlands, theoretical work in wetlands in Sicily and Sardinia. Just to complete, so the general approach was to have a clear framework in mind, to create and foster a network of alliances with the common goal, which is increasing resilience and working on biodiversity conservation. The approach was through concrete field interventions in the two study areas, and the general idea is start from this concrete example, see if there is a potential to replicate these examples elsewhere, and also feed in these examples to the policy level, therefore to a broader scale whenever possible, and with the peculiarity of the two countries involved. Next, I'm going to introduce you the Mediterranean Mosaics team. Marco Pagliani is not here today, but he was our international coordinator. Pedro Regato was our scientific advisor. And today we have here Nizar Hani, the leader of the Lebanese study area. Alessio Di Giulio was leading the work in Velino Sirente in Italy, and Mattia Brambilla, who is going to present after me due to some logistic issue. Mattia was the leading person on the study on bird communities in the Apennine prairies. So at this point, I think I will give the floor to Mattia, who is going to start with this presentation. Thanks a lot.
Mattia, you are mute now.
Okay, I have some issue with the Zoom window. I cannot restore it from the bottom of my screen, sorry. Let's try again now. I can't believe it. It's crazy. Sorry, I'm not able to manage Zoom in this moment. I think it's...
No, I just wanted to say that we tested our presentation sharing 5 minutes ago. I could put it on full screen and now it wasn't working. So it may maybe have to do with many people connected.
No, I think it's a problem of my personal computer. I cannot open the Zoom window. So I hear you, I'm talking to you, but I don't see Zoom and it is not possible to open it.
Mattia, shall I try to load your presentation?
Yes, but I think I would not see it.
Yeah. Is it? Is it an option to get into the meeting again?
I don't know. I see the preview of the Zoom windows, but I cannot manage it. It's crazy.
Why don't you get out and in again, Mattia? Maybe that would help.
Yes, but I can't do anything now in Zoom apart from talking to you. Sorry for this.
Okay. Is there an option to swap presentations, or but because you have to leave a bit earlier, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is possible. I left, so we will come in again. Sorry for this, everybody. Technical problem happens. So he's joining the meeting again.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome back, Mattia.
Okay, now things are working. Sorry, I apologize again for this.
No problem.
Okay, so I will try now to show in full screen my presentation. Okay, do you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, it's coming.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now eventually I can talk about grass and birds. This work has been done in the second phase of the project and is based on mountains, which are particularly important for conservation biology because they host a disproportionately high proportion of biodiversity hotspots on the world, and they are caused at high risk by climate change. Mountains include complex systems where climate interacts with many factors, creating incredible ecological and environmental gradients with associated high level of biodiversity. And mountains are changing because of climate change. We are assisting at a decrease in snow in glacier, but also in alpine grassland and other high elevation habitats. Birds are one of the best bioindicators among all living taxa and are characteristics also of mountains. In the Arctic region, more than 1/3 of species inhabit also mountains, and of those species, 40% are specialists of mountains. So the mountains are particularly important also specifically for bird conservation. So birds, mountains, and climate change are the main characters of this talk and of our work. They are well known, but we have few information about how they interact, so on what are the effects of climate change on mountain birds. Such effects are not something that can be envisioned for the future, but is something that is already happening. Cold adapted species are retracting. As an example, in Italy, they lost a significant percentage of their range in contrast to warm adapted species. Some high elevation specialists are undergoing a decrease in survival due to high temperature in recent years. And so this is a conservation urgency, a priority. And to conserve these threatened species, we need first to disentangle the effects of climate, of land use and land cover, of habitat structure and human interference on these species, and to assess at which spatial scale the determinants of species ecology actually operate. We've been studying this system of threatened species in Central Apennines, as Claudio said before. This area hosts a large extent of grassland over wide elevation gradients and providing an ideal context to assess the effects of these multiple drivers. And we have three main questions that drove our research. What are the effects of climate factors on species distribution, and are they consistent over different spatial scales? And what is more important for species, climate topography, land cover, human impact? And finally, what is the potential distribution of species which are cold adapted but have important population in Mediterranean mountains, so in generally warm region? First, we investigated the climate effect at two different spatial scales on 4 grassland bird species. And we tried to evaluate the effect of climate across the scales and also as compared with the a priori effects of climate that we hypothesized to compare in the climatic niche of each species with the climatic values of the same climate parameters within our study area. And what we found is that for water pipit, we have a full concordance between the two scales and between what we expected for this species. So we found a negative effect of average temperature at territory and landscape level, and this is fully consistent with what we expect for this species. But for all other species and climatic parameters, things were much less straightforward. The closely related Tawny pipit, as an example, we expected for it a positive effect of temperature at both scales. We found no effect at territory scale and a negative effect of landscape scale. This means that the association between these species and temperature is not due to a direct effect of temperature for sure, but is likely tied to indirect effects such as more or less predators at different climates or more or less suitable structure of grassland. But this is something which is not related to a direct effect of climate on our target species. In general, we found a lack of consistency which suggests indirect effects and a direct effect only for water pipit. This means that the ultimate drivers of species occurrence are more likely to act at fine scale, being somewhat correlated with climate, but in most cases, the species are not directly affected by climate itself. So we start to investigate the importance of such different drivers by comparing the importance of climate, land use, and human interference on 3 declining species: water pipit again, skylark, and red-backed shrike. We investigated the importance of this group of drivers and of single factors to evaluate the role of different kinds of predictors on species occurrence at a local scale. And we found a relative importance of such different drivers varying across the species. But importantly, for all species, models which combine predictors from different groups are those that perform the best. So all these kind of predictors are likely to contribute to the fine scale occurrence of species. And the most important single group of predictors vary across the species. For skylark, it was the land cover. For water pipit, climate, whereas for red-backed shrike, all the groups have equal support. In short, all species are tied to grassland, but water pipit avoids warmer areas and shrubland and prefers grazed areas. Skylark avoids scipistes, rocks, shrubs, and buildings, being tied to the pure grassland habitat. Red-backed shrike finally avoids grazing, avoids forest, and prefers shrubland and scattered shrubs. Last point is about the distribution of cold adaptive species in the Mediterranean region. We focused on the snowfinch because this is a relative of the sparrows, but it is a high elevation specialist, and it is highly sensitive to climate change and habitat modification related to it, because it is a species strictly tied to cold sites where there is snow, short alpine grassland, or a mix of the two, and this is reflected also in its microhabitat selection during foraging, where snowfinch prefers snow patches, short grassland, and they avoid urbanized areas. This species in Europe is concentrated in mountains of the southern countries, so the Alps, Pyrenees, Cantabrian Mountains, Apennines, and the Balkans. And we modeled its distribution after collecting data from several partners throughout Europe. We gathered more than 14,000 of occurrence records of the species. We modeled its distribution in relation to climate and land cover and compared it with the bird life distribution, which you see in a light blue in this map. And what we found is that models clearly suggest a strict link with temperature for the species, and that also that the real distribution of the species is likely to be different from the reported one, especially in Southern Europe mountains and especially in Eastern Europe, where the distribution, as you can see in this map, is likely to be much more fragmented and restricted, as highlighted by the orange and the red areas, which are the suitable ones for the species, and is not so broad and continuous as the BirdLife shapefile may suggest at the first read. This means also that the population spreading in these mountains, so in the Cantabrian Mountains, in the Balkans, but also in the Apennines, where we've been working, appear to be at greater risk because of climate change impacts, which will likely increase their isolation and reduce the suitable areas. So in conclusion, climate change is actually affecting the bird of mountain grassland, both directly or indirectly. And also human-related alteration is doing this, not only with land use, such as grazing, but also with cyclists which are negatively impacting on some species. The Southern European population are highly relevant for conservation, but are also suffering isolation. And even if different species are mostly impacted by different drivers, human interference is a key factor for all, and this should be clearly taken into account in conservation planning. Conservation planning, in the end, needs to include the landscape planning to preserve suitable mosaics, the identification of climate refugia for snowfinch and water pipit, which are directly affected by climate, and dedicated management to preserve the suitable habitats. Considering the local economies of the Apennines in particular, it should be rather feasible to combine sustainable economies with biodiversity conservation into an informed landscape planning. Thanks to this project, we have provided some scientific evidence of what I'll show you now. These are the papers that have been produced thanks to the project, and these are other references that I've cited during my talk or that are on strictly related topics from other study areas. So I have finished my time, and I would like to thanks a lot MAVA Foundation for making it possible, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mattia. And as I said before, if there is someone new in the room, so questions, you can put your questions in the chat box, and then in the end we will respond to those. And Claudio, should you introduce Nizar?
Yes, now it's Nizar's turn. Probably most of you know already Nizar. He's leading in the most important protected area of the region. And yes, up to you, Nizar.
Let me just take a few seconds just to remind that Nizar was recently awarded with the Kenton R. Miller Award. So congratulations to him, and partly a very well-deserved award, and partly because of the results of his management on, of course, in Shouf and about this project too. Nizar, you have the floor.
You may be muted.
Yeah. So you're right, Lois. Thank you, Claudio and Lois. The Kenton Miller Award based on the forest and landscape restoration work that has been started with the MED-MOSAIC project, the MED-MOSAIC 1 and the MED-MOSAIC 2. Just for the information of everyone, and I'm so happy to meet the different colleagues from the different countries, mainly Irma from WWF. We met 19 years ago in Italy. I'm so happy to see Irma here in the conference and the webinar today. As well, for more information about the MED-MOSAIC project, please, you can visit the website mediterraneanmosaic.org. All the publication, all the work that has been done in the project, you can find it on the website. At the beginning, and very quickly, who doesn't know the Shouf Biosphere Reserve, it exists in Lebanon, one of the largest protected areas in the Mediterranean region. It is designated as a biosphere reserve in 2005 and green listed in 2018, and it's managed under the umbrella of Ministry of Environment in Lebanon through a local committee. As colleagues mentioned, the MED-MOSAIC project has been started with the aim to let the Mediterranean landscape be more resilient with climate change. In Lebanon and in the Shouf area, as everywhere in the Mediterranean region. We have now more temperature, we have less rain, we have more heat waves, and for sure that will increase the forest fires. And mainly our forest is similar to the other Mediterranean forest. It's full of biomass. So the beginning of the MOSAIC project in 2012, 2013, we developed the restoration plan, as well as an annex for the restoration plan, we developed the thermal biomass for Lebanon, which is looking to the whole region, forest and agriculture land, and planning with the locals and the local partners how to manage the biomass to minimize the risk of forest fires in the region. So we look to the landscape, which is stretching between 800 meter and 2000 meter. We look to the different land use following the altitudinal levels. It's more or less like we distributed the region into 6 different ecological zones, let's say. On the top of the mountains, now the cedar forest and the whole forest in Lebanon is migrating for higher altitude because of the climate change that we are facing. The planning at that time is to reintroduce the Nubian ibex for the higher part of the mountain above the tree line, which is the Nubian ibex was exist in Lebanon, and it is the natural grazing of this kind of landscape. On the level of the cedar forest, between 1,200 meter and 1,800 meter, we worked to enlarge the surface of the cedar forest. We worked on different protocols to improve the whole process, the land preparation, the plantation. We did the protocol for the plant native species production. Now our nurseries is able to produce 30 native trees. At that time, 10 years ago, we were planting 2 to 3 species, the pine and the cedar and some other species. Now we are able to produce 30 native trees and shrubs. We worked on some old quarries as well. One of those quarries, it is a good example how to restore an old quarry. On the lower altitude, where we have the pine and oak forest, there we focused our intervention on the biomass management. We worked with the Ministry of Agriculture and the municipalities, and now it's being like a practice in the region. We do a kind of thinning and cleaning of the forest to minimize the risk of fire. We combine all these materials from the forest and the agriculture land. We shred it, we mix it with manure to be transformed into composting, to be used in the agriculture land, as well as we mix it with olive pomace to do a kind of briquette, which is a cheap alternative of the community than using wood, because 50–60% of our community, they still using wood for heating in winter. Now we have a factory managed by a local group which is producing around 3–4 million briquettes, which is covering around 50–60% of the need in the region. For sure, we relook to the zoning of the grazing in the region and the goats that exist in the surrounding area of the reserve, helping in managing the biomass as well and minimizing the risk of fire. As well, we did some restoration work in the grazing land. We did some plantation in the bouquet format within fences. And it was very successful, and the shepherds were very happy in that. Part of the restoration work was in the old abandoned terraces. The Shouf area is well known as a well-known area of the old terraces with the beautiful stone wall that well known in the Mediterranean region. we developed through the MOSAIC project a protocol how to restore those old abandoned terraces using native species with high economic value, as well as working on the traditional water systems that was exist in the region and trying to do those small stoppers to minimize the running of the water and to minimize the erosion, as well as to increase the water infiltration. Part of the work that we did a kind of assessment for the groundwater in the region, and later on we produced something very practical. We call it freshwater assessment report, which is suggesting many interventions in the whole surrounding area of the reserve to improve water management, because part of the climate change adaptation is to improve the management of the water. As well, through the project, we look to the general master plan in the 22 surrounding villages of the reserve, and we worked on some detailed urban plan with some of the municipalities, because urbanization is still the risk #1 in Lebanon. A small country, everyone wants to live in the beautiful mountainous area, and the urbanization is still a very high risk on forest and biodiversity. Those are some examples of the designs that we did for the village square. As well, we did a kind of monitoring protocols. This is one of the species that we work together with LIPU. We call it the Syrian Siren, a native species. It was a kind of indicator to monitor the impact of the MOSAIC project activities on the biodiversity. As well, we improved some monitoring protocols to monitor the survival rate of the reforestation sites. And in fact, it was a big success, because with time now we are able to plant without irrigation, and the survival rate is being higher and higher. Some sites we reach 85% of survival rate, and that increased the cost of the reforestation activities and help to be able to upscale the work of the restoration. In numbers, here for sure, we started with the MOSAIC project, and we were able to attract more funding and to engage the private sector in Lebanon. And through other projects like the M6, which is funded by MAVA as well, we were able in the last 10 years to restore around 200 hectares of old abandoned terraces, 200 hectares of cedar forest, 30 hectares of grazing land, hectares of biomass management. We were able to develop the trail network in the reserve and the surrounding villages. Now we have around 500 kilometers of trails. We help to create many SMEs and small businesses related to conservation and forest management and rural development and ecotourism. The number of visitors last year was 120,000 visitors, and this is a big number, and for sure that helped the whole local economy in the region, because the locals are providing all needed services like the guest houses, the table d'hôte, and the guiding, and the rural products and all that stuff. On the administrative level, we established through the MOSAIC project 12 forest municipal committees in the different municipalities surrounding the reserve, as well as a green alliance, which is including representatives from the 12 forest committees. And now this body is playing a key role in the sustainable management of the forest and the landscape. One last slide, we were able together with local communities, local authorities, to develop a vision for the forest and landscape restoration work that we did in the region. So this is more or less an illustrator representing this vision. We need the locals together with the experts, with the visitors, with the different relative stakeholders and partners to work together to ensure the sustainability of this landscape. The results of 8 years of cooperation and working together was the Forest and Landscape Restoration Guidelines, which is, you can find it on the Shouf Biosphere Reserve website, which is following the 8 principles of the forest and landscape restoration. And really now this is the main document which is guiding the whole work that we are doing in the region. As well, there is an annex for the forest and landscape restoration guidelines related to the policies and the laws that exist in Lebanon, which is managing forest, landscape, agriculture, land, and so on. So the work was focused on the technical level, which is improving the whole processes and the whole restoration activities, as well as on the advocacy level and the administrative level, working with the authorities on the national and regional level to let this guidelines, the plan for the whole region. And that helped, in fact, other regions in Lebanon and other sites in the Mediterranean region, that through forest and landscape restoration, we can sustain this landscape and we can provide many job opportunities and we can involve the communities in a practical way. That's what we call it, the practical conservation. We do conservation, but the results are more or less supporting the income of the local economy and the different local groups. For sure, this work, MAVA played a key role in supporting the whole momentum of the forest and landscape restoration, in addition to other partners and other donors, public and private donors that support us. Currently, we are in a stage to upscale this work to the whole region and to more sites with more partners. And I think that is a good plan for the future of this region and hopefully for the future of the whole Mediterranean region. That's it.
Thank you very much, Nizar. Let me say that to work with you in all these years has been a great experience. I've learned a lot about your way of working and also your culture, which was really enriching and fascinating.
Thank you.
Luis, if you don't have anything to add.
No, thank you very much. I'm very sorry I lost connection here for a couple of minutes. But yeah, please go on to the next presentation, and thank you very much, Nizar.
Thank you.
If I may just interrupt for a second, just to explain something very specific. So hi, everybody, and happy to see you all. We had to change the order of presentation. So now we're going to have a presentation from Italy, which will be the mirror of the presentation you had from Nizar. And the presentation we had initially was about the monitoring of the changes observed in the landscape following the interventions. And of course, maybe it was a little bit puzzling and difficult to understand why did this come ahead. So now we're going to give you the framework. And sorry for switching, but Mattia had to go to the hospital, I understand. So this is why we switched.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Paul, for clarifying. I should have explained that, but I hope now it's clear to everybody. So Alessio, the floor is yours.
You have to unmute, Alessio. You have no microphone now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very happy about that because it seems that all the work we have done in these years with our partners is producing something positive, and this is can be appreciated also from an external point of view. So we have implemented this branch of the Mediterranean Mosaic project in Abruzzo. Let me see if I can, okay. In Abruzzo, which is east of Rome, in the mountain range of Apennines. This area includes the higher peak of the Apennines range. And we are, the past part of the area we have worked about is inside the regional park of Velino Sirente, and which include the Sirente peak, which is close to 2,400 meters. So this area, the area where we have worked includes 15 municipalities, more or less 300 square kilometers, which are covered for the 60% of woodland. A woodland which, whose surface is increasing, reducing the surface of the grazing area and the open land in the mountains, and reducing also the farmland in the valley. The most part of this area, as I pointed before, is inside this protected area Sirente-Velino, which is the regional. And but this wide area includes only 8,600 inhabitants, spread in many little villages of a few hundred people each. And there is a big problem of depopulation and community aging. So this area is can be considered very typical of the, not only of the Apennine range, but of the many other areas around the Mediterranean, many other mountain areas around the Mediterranean, and also in the Alps. So we still have an alive rural mosaic landscape with a high biodiversity, because there is a big difference in altitude exposition, and because it's a geographical location. Consider that this area has a lot of problem with the summer forest fire, and also with stress because lack of rain, as we had in this last summer, which is making all this forest area, which is pretty wide, threatened of to disappear suddenly because large fires. We have nature, pretty rich nature and biodiversity, and also a rich historical heritage made of this untouched medieval village, which support a still fragile tourism economy, but which is growing in the last year. Also, we had a very positive feedback result this summer because the COVID, we are considered depopulated areas, so a lot of people came here and we became populated. And a minor firewood production, mainly from commons. Just few firms are still active in this field. So we have a lot of former coppice forest still abandoned, who is no more natural forest, no more coppice forest, no more, and not yet a natural forest. What is very important in this area is the production of truffle, which support a sort of black economy, not, which is from a natural forest and also from artificial forest. This kind of economy, as far as the marginal agriculture we have, is affected by the wild fauna, which provoke a lot of damage, and this is a problem we had to deal with. Because we have a relevant number of deers, wolves, roe deers, wild boar, and so on, which are very nice for biodiversity and for as an appeal for the tourists, but they provoke a lot of damage to and reduce the chance to have a real productive agriculture, which maintaining the rural mosaic landscape. So this is a key problem, and also the competition between these very little farms with the other farming areas is very important. So there are very little production. What is important, what we are working about, is that there are many ancient cultivars who are very appreciated now on the market. So what we worked about in this, we focus on 3 points: the river contract implementation, which come from the EU Water Directive, to manage, to improve the quality of the water in the river Aterno, and the sustainable forest management, and the traditional farming support. So speaking about the river, we mainly worked on awareness program about the river and to lobby the local authority to start up the process. It's still not finalized, but I think we did a good work to re-attract the interest of the people on the river, and to which was very important in the past for many reasons, and which now is completely forgotten. Then we worked a lot with also with the children and the local community to show the indicators for the quality of the water. And so we try to also to educate the people to appreciate the river and its environment. Along the river, we also planted a pilot plot of forest with native trees, to show, which is upon a former landfill. Which have been pretty successful despite the small size. But the more important thing we have worked about is to develop in this valley the so-called model forest approach, which is something generated 20 years ago, more or less, in Canada, and who spread all over the world in many sites. And so which is a method to involve the local community in a shared planning about different sectors, mainly forest, but also farming, also tourism, also other kind of local economy. So we found this approach very interesting, also as a sort of a package to present our approach to the local municipality, to make it more appealing. And so we lobbied to sign an agreement with the Canadian government and also with the Mediterranean coordinator of this model forest network to commit the regional authority to find an area where a pilot area to start up this process. And 15 municipalities applied to become the pilot area. So we started our process involving the local stakeholders from the local administration, from firms, from farms, from association and single person, to visit the best practice, which is in Tuscany. And I want to stress this point because I think it's so important to visit other places, as we did with Lebanon and Spain, because it's let the community, the people create a sort of share a view, understand that something is feasible, and it's there is a sort of team building effect that legitimate the concept that before was considered really ununderstandable. Sorry, I'm checking my... then we started the bottom-up strategic planning, which so involving different group of interest with the stakeholders, so forest people with a focus on forests, on tourism, on association and cultures and farming. And we developed a draft strategic plan. We also involved again the school in rediscovering the forest, which sounds strange, but are completely forgot by the local community. So we organized the visit in the beech forest and in other new forest who reconquered the abandoned land. We organized the exhibition, community events, and also a video have been used to explain the concept of model forest. We made a website which is still running, and we produced other communication material which have been very useful to attract the attention on this point. Also, a very practical first feedback was to advise the municipality on how to realize a small-sized biomass heating system, which use the minor production of coming from the artificial pine forest reduction in density and reduction of exotic trees, and also to switch from coppice forest to high, I don't know the technical term, sorry, to the forest, more natural forest. We also worked a lot in advise the farmers, the little farm, and to organize a marketing event, because the main problem of the farmers is that they have not the capacity to make a proper marketing of their produce, and so they and to process their produce. So they have not the add value, enough add value to their produce. So we organized the meeting with the buyers from the main metropolitan urban areas. It was pretty effective. And now is more important is that we create we created a sort of we made several farmers rely on us as promoter of local development. And so finally we obtained our group of farmers have been acknowledged as a slow food community. You know, I think slow food movement, and which is a sort of group of people who start to work for the sustainability, for sustainable farming, and to maintain the mosaic landscape. So next step are start up the Model Forest Valley Association with 15 municipalities, many firms and association and individuals. Start up its secretariat who can attract resource, and start up projects, and to get the final international model forest approval of so become officially a model forest. Now we are just candidate, and apply for funds, private and public, which will be used to implement the different projects who are listed in this dream book, which is now the strategy. And then we will start to implement the strategy step by step. So finally, we have a very nice visit by the FAO, the Restoration Initiative program, who were gathering meeting in Rome. And so they had a field trip in our area to visit our results. And so it was very successful, and also very nice to have these people from all over the world in our area. The main lesson learned in this project is that it's very important to have the capacity, also the financial resource to work, to act as a catalyzer of a social, environmental, and economic process about sustainability for years. We had some resource for 5 years, and this was very important because the most part of the public money budget project lasts 1 year, 2 years, which is not enough. So as soon as you have started with to create a community of people sharing a project, sharing a vision, then you can start to apply for public funds and other kind of funds. But what MAVA, the key role played by MAVA in our case was to allow us to work for 5 years to start up this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessio. And before giving the floor for the last short presentation on the wetlands tool to Claudio, just reminding you to write down your questions in the chat box. So just after this next presentation from Claudio, we have the presenters responding to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, Claudio.
Okay.
Please go on.
But just let me
As
say,
we are getting out of the rails of timekeeping,
I think we are doing fine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is going to be very short, and it's okay. The last presentation. Let me say before I start a big thank you to Alessio for the excellent work. And also, we didn't have time we don't have time to discuss it, but there was a lot of cross-fostering between Alessio's and Nizar, and that's also an added value of the project. They did a lot of work together, and as well as with LIPU. So we are going to talk about Mediterranean wetlands at this point, where our main task was to develop a priority tool, a tool to assess the conservation priorities of wetlands in Sicily and Sardinia. Okay, so I know that I'm talking to many good ornithologists, ecologists, bird experts, but this is just to set the scene and to simply illustrate the case that we shouldn't think about bird migration and flyways as very well-defined corridors, but rather as broad fronts of migrations from Africa to the Palearctic and vice versa. And one of these broad flyways goes through the central Mediterranean, and Sicily and Sardinia are play an important role in bird migration. When we talk about bird migration, we can roughly distinguish three kinds of migration. One has to do with passerine birds, which mainly migrate during the night. The other one has to do with soaring birds, which rely on thermals, and they use that to sustain their flights. And the other one is water bird migration. And we can say that when we talk about water birds, special rules apply, mainly because water birds are often aggregated in discrete sites that we usually call stopover sites when we talk about migration, and water birds are highly dependent on these sites, and if these sites deteriorate, then they may experience very, very serious problems at the population level. But unfortunately, in the Mediterranean ecoregion, there are a lot of these areas are subject to many threats that you see listed in this slide. And we also know that climate change is playing a very strong and increasing role. So this is a picture of Pantano Cuba in southern Sicily. This was taken in September. I guess to some extent it is normal that some of these coastal wetlands dry up, but there is a increasing trend in this phenomenon. So something to be concerned about. So the objective of this part of the Mediterranean Mosaic project was to assess the status and the threats to 38 large wetlands, all protected by the Birds Directive, and belonging to the Mediterranean bird flyways in Sardinia and in Sicily. And next, we wanted to prioritize the need for intervention in these wetlands based on the avifaunal value and based on the existing and future threats. So this is the study area, the two Italian regions, Sicily and Sardinia, and the main coastal wetlands, excluding wetlands that are clearly artificial, such as salt pans, for example. So our first task was indeed to assess the bird value of each of these areas. And we did that by sampling these areas during 2 summers. So that was what Mark Augustin did for both the years, and we had to optimize the effort because it was really a lot of area to cover, and we did that through an algorithm that optimized indeed the effort. So what we obtained for each area was both a quantitative value, but also this value was weighted by the kind of species that were present in the sites. That is, we added a qualitative component to the bird data using the red list and the spec classification. Concerning the climate change, the data were available from the web. We used the most recent and reliable IPCC data available, and we projected the data into two scenarios. One is the moderate scenario, the other one is a more extreme scenario. And we focused on the first time interval, the 2011-2040. So we were predicting climate scenario in 2040. And by doing that, we could also obtain data on the evaporation, water evaporation. And in the meantime, we were also collecting data on the existing threats around these wetlands. So this is an example for the RCP 4.5 scenario. And this is the scenario for the evaporation. Apart from this, and apart from collecting quantitative or semi-quantitative data on existing threats, we also worked on land use change by comparing aerial photographs of in different years. And this made it possible to understand that the dynamics of land change are quite different in Sicily and in Sardinia, because basically in Sicily, during these 22 years of the period analyzed, wetlands and surrounding areas lost 1,120 hectares, mainly due to agriculture, whereas in Sardinia, the loss was even higher, but it was mainly due to urbanization. So two different dynamics in the two regions. And these are the other threats that we considered during this study. So at the end, we, as I mentioned, we had the two components that we could include in our risk analysis, the two components describing the avifauna in each wetland. At the moment, it doesn't. Oh, sorry. Okay. Then we had the current threats, the data that we collected in the fields, and then we had the projected threats. That is the climate-driven water shortage, the land cover change. And also we measured in some way the salt water intrusion, because clearly it should be mentioned that if on one side there is these areas run the risk of drying up, especially in the last part of the summer, on the other hand, we are also aware of this dynamic of water level that is increasing and all the consequences of that. So by considering together all these parameters, we obtained what is a risk matrix, and this can provide a sort of general picture of the priorities of intervention in the two regions. And what you can see in this graph on the right is that on the x-axis you have the bird value, and on the y-axis you have the threats. And this means that these areas here on the upper right hand corner are the ones where urgent intervention should be concentrated. And then for each of the 38 wetlands, we produced a very synthetic chart describing the situation. This work has been very recently published, and you can find here the references. And I just would like to conclude by saying that this work is not meant to substitute the detailed work that the good work that the local institutions and the regions are carrying out through Natura 2000, through the management plans, which, by the way, we took into account in our descriptive charts, but it's more meant to provide an additional view on the system, which we hope will trigger immediate action where it is more needed. The message that we obtained from this study, it's a theoretical study, but it's a study where we collected data in the field, is that each area has its own problems, for sure, but that in general we really need to act swiftly, otherwise we are going to lose some places that are really irreplaceable for the birds and not only for the birds. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Claudio. And we have already some questions in the chat box. Two are more or less similar. Lourdes Lázaro was asking about how to scale up these results, and José Tavares was developing a bit further. So maybe I would invite José to elaborate on his question, so then the participants can respond to you.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I think Lourdes had a very good point. So we saw these two great examples in Shouf and also in Abruzzo of efforts to tackle at local level some of the challenges that were described in the two presentations with very good results, without any doubt. However, at global regional level, these represent 2 points in a very large map. If we talk about landscape level and or regional species status, those efforts in those two sites will have very little impact globally or regionally. So the challenge, as with many other things, and context, is how do we scale these efforts to the wider Mediterranean, and what is really in replicating examples such as those two that have been presented and that are very successful to really many more places, so that at regional level the impact and the outputs can be felt.
Okay, I think Nizar already partly responded, and then I would give the floor to the other participants that want to respond to this. Nizar?
Yes, I shared the link for the forest and landscape restoration guidelines, and the main reason of publishing this guidelines is to be implemented in other regions in the Mediterranean area. If you allow me again to share additional few slides.
Yeah. I would just, yeah, just for the sake of everybody being informed that this call should end in 8 minutes. So we should go as swiftly as possible on questions and answers.
Very quickly, because the guidelines, including how we implemented the 8 principles of the forest and landscape restoration, and under every principle, there is some tools, let's say how to engage stakeholders, how to check the root causes of the threats, and all that stuff can be implemented everywhere in the Mediterranean region. And now we are working together with MAVA and other partners, Oikos Institute, to produce an abridged version of the forest and landscape restoration guidelines, as well as developing a mock to be available for everyone who wants to use the results of this work.
Can I add a thing? We have just submitted a project to the cooperation agency of the Italian government with the Oikos and the Shouf Biosphere Reserve to share best practice between these two sites. This is, I think, is a good way to spread the result we had in both the sites, because as I pointed before, it's very important to visit, to get in touch, to see the result, also to motivate the people. And so I think if we succeed in this application, I think would be a good starting point for delivering the result of this project.
Okay, thank you. There are many participants here in the audience working on the outcome action plan for cultural landscapes, which also contributes to upscaling the work done by this project, or replicating, whatever. I don't know if Paul wants to add some on this, or any other participant on those projects.
I'm happy to add something, but I'd prefer to hear it from the group.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, it's Concha here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Welcome,
okay.
Concha.
Well, thank you very much. It has been really interesting. Even if some of the projects are referred to a kind of a small area of the Mediterranean, you realize every time that we have the exactly similar problems. So the comments on that area where they suffer wildfires, depopulation, abandonment with agriculture, problems with commercialization of small producers, I think we have exactly the same situation. So I wonder, because I think there is a lot done, and there are a lot of specialists all over the Mediterranean, and most of the problems are really detected and specified. I wonder if you just start a kind of more networking work, so we can really push ahead with all the evidence to policymakers and decision makers, and also to motivate more the people in the territory, that they can also have the solution in their hands. So I think they are the two keys we should really promote now, like working at the big level as a big network in the Mediterranean to communicate our message to policymakers, but also to encourage population that they also have to be active, and the solution is also in their hands. That sometimes people think it's all in the policymakers' decision, but I think there's a lot to do from the bottom-up point of view. I think that, so thank you very much for, once again, it's clear that the problems are more and more common, and we should act very swift and soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Concha.
May I weigh in?
Yes. Hello, Engin.
Hello, everybody. This is Engin from Turkey, from Yol Initiative. Well, Nizar already knows a lot about our partnership, the M6 program, because Shouf Reserve is a very active partner. So we also know the work being done in Shouf very well. But for the other partners within this project, I would like to tell a bit about M6 program, which is aiming to develop structured partnership to address the nature conservation problems that we are facing in Mediterranean with a landscape approach. And as Concha said, there are many similarities in all the basin. Like, for instance, as you all know, we are mainly focused on mobile pastoralism. When we talk about Abruzzo, when we talk about abandoned people, it's mostly pastoralists who used to use those places as summer pastures. When I think in Sardinia, that is a very similar issue as well, which is that the traditional pastoralism transformed to a more sedentarized and intensified production system, and now they are using a lot of water. So it is creating a huge stress on water, fresh water as well. What I'm trying to say is, as we are almost 13 organizations right now within the partnership, and our aim is to all together as a network to create an impact at regional level, at national levels, blah blah, but also as a network we want to find out what are the best tools to make an impact at regional level. Well, this is the question what Jose asked. That's also our question, how we can deal with this problem to make an impact at regional level. So after this meeting, I would like to get in touch with you, Alessio, and others as well, to tell more about as M6 program what we are doing, and to explore the possibility of collaboration between our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Engin. Okay.
Maybe a reaction from the Atlas. I see there are people from the Atlas on the call.
Hi, it's Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Anais. I'm sorry if there's a disturbance. I just wanted to say, I wanted to follow on from what Engin said, and with just a note that I'm actually based in Rieti, in the foothills of the Apennines. So if we wanted to have a face-to-face meeting, Alessio, for an engagement around the M6 partnership and around natural landscapes, I'm available for in-person meetings. But yes, I wanted to just sort of note the great interest that Ugo is here as well. Ugo and I followed the presentations with, and really fascinating stuff. We're also moving into a more sort of bird and monitoring approaches in the High Atlas. So I think we have a lot to learn from what LIPU is doing. So yeah, I'm sorry I'm not going to speak longer than this, but yeah, great presentations. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Emily.
We can extend. I found really interesting to see the similarities between the cases. So thank you for your presentations. And also I had a question for the first presentation relating with the distribution of birds. Did you see or analyze any relation between land use and management changes and the distribution of the birds? Maybe I missed it on the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Mattia was here, but basically we were considering three components. One was climate change, the other was land use, and the other land management. And the general idea was being able to disentangle these effects. Because, you know, we keep saying climate change, but it's important to understand the mechanism. And as Mattia was presenting, you can have a direct climate change effects and indirect climate change effects. And this has very important management consequences. So in this sense, we think we are providing some useful tools at not only a local scale, but a broader scale. And now the challenge is to use them, and I would be very happy to discuss with you and other people more about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Claudio.
Sure.
And possible, sorry.
In the end, Rafa, yes, just a moment. Just saying that in the end, I will send, of course, share the contacts of the presenters so you can get in touch with everybody. Okay, Alessio, please.
This is what I was asking for.
Okay, good. I also have a question from Rafa and then Paul. Okay.
May I speak? No, Luis?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm sorry because in the middle I have to get out of the webinar because of, well, problems with the baby, and I have to come back then. But my question is related with the socioeconomic impact and aspects of the initiative, because we are trying to work on this landscape approach on a territory here in Spain. And what we found most difficult and challenging is to convince the people around to be part of the initiative, at least in the beginning, no? Because once it's rolling over and working, maybe some people come along because they see the benefits. But in the beginning, it's really challenging for us. So my question is that if you have to select one or two key aspects of the initiative to convince the local people to be part of the initiative, what would be, in the opinion of all the presenters, if possible? Thanks.
Yes, who wants to start responding to Rafael? Unless you Nizar, probably. Yeah, Nizar, please.
Maybe, Rafael, the key of convincing people is to do a good example and pilot sites, and to be what I mentioned in the presentation, to be practical. And now we are using this terminology in our region, practical conservation. We need to do conservation, but the result, the output of this project should benefit someone, should support someone, should support the local economy. What we did in the MOSAIC, when we developed the restoration plan at the beginning, we did pilot sites, 1 or 2 old abandoned terraces, 1 site related to grazing management, other 2 sites related to reforestation and biomass management. And now really it's a snowball. Now the donors are more interested, the local authorities are more interested, as well as the local partners are more interested, because they saw good results, mainly on the agriculture land level.
Can I add, I completely share what Nida said, but also there is another point that you have to, yes, you have to immediately show some practical result. So, and this is the main problem, because if you apply or upscale what you are doing, you need a resource. Often they come from public funds from the EU in Europe, for European countries. And this is a problem because they take a lot of time. They need a lot of bureaucracy. And you risk to lose the interest of part of the stakeholders, because from the step, starting from the step when you plan, you raise the interest, you collect needs, and then when you start to have to give answers, often there is a gap of time which is too long, and this is a still open problem. I have not a solution. We are working this way. You have always to reattract the attention of the stakeholder, because always, especially because they are very little farm or very little a tourist operator, very little firm, they have no time to invest in networking. They have not resource. So an external body need to catalyze, to act as a facilitator and to provide opportunities. Maybe, as you said before, as soon as you have result, the people restart to be interested. But yes, there is a very risky process.
Thank you very much. I love the term practical conservation, and really I'm worried about this lack of time between what you want to do and what really happens afterwards. And we have the same problem in this Guadalquivir estuary because the actions that we want to promote are kind of delayed in the time with the effect. And this is what really worries me, that we are not capable of maintaining these good vibes with the stakeholders and so on. But thank you very much. It was inspiring and very interesting.
Thank you also for your question, Rafa. I have Paul next, and I don't know if I have any other question, not in the chat box. So I think we close with this from Paul, question or comment, I don't know.
Yes, I just wanted to remind you, because we were speaking about how to scale up these excellent results, and thank you for the great presentation. And we spoke about networks, using networks. Please remember that you have 2 networks at your disposal that MAVA set up years ago, and that right now are just trained with empty wagons, but waiting to be used. One of them very close to the work that we have been describing is the MEDITERRAN, the network of forest of high biological value. So through these, communication and replication and lesson learned and know-how can be shared. And also there's the Consortium for Nature and Culture, which is a network also that was set up a few years ago, quite inactive at the moment, but could be revived, reactivated or as needed. These are tools, but please remember that they are at your disposal. And once again, thanks everybody. It was very interesting, and I very much hope that it will be the starting point for more collaboration, even within our action plans, M3, coastal wetland, M6, cultural landscape, but much more broadly through our MAVA partnership and further, of course. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And I think with this, well, we are starting to lose some audience now, so we are running out of time. I'd like to just refer again that we will share the link for this conference because it's being recorded, and also the contacts of the presenters, so you can further contact them and share your experiences or cooperate in future projects or among your projects, whatever. And also to thank you all, the presenters, very good presentations, and congratulate you again for the excellent results of this project, Mediterranean Mosaics. And also thank you to Suzanne, my colleague that was in charge of organizing this Zoom call. It was very nice also, and I think it ran well and can be a good experience for other projects to share their results among the partnership. So hope, don't hesitate to propose other conferences like this from your projects if you feel like that you can share your results and get more cooperations and exchanges with other partners. So with this, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye, and congrats again
Bye.
to the team of Mediterranean Mosaics. Thank you very much.